This country was founded on compromise. I couldn't go through the front door at this country's founding. And if we were really thinking about ideal positions, we wouldn't have a union.
Well, President Obama making the case for compromise and trying to quell the anger within his own party over extending the Bush tax cuts for the wealthy, simultaneously winning unemployment benefits and tax cuts for the balance of Americans. A payroll tax cut for 1 year is in there, some estate tax arrangements in there as well. All of it done on the American credit card through borrowing. You just heard Senator Sanders threatening to filibuster if that's what it takes to stop the deal with the Republicans. I do want to bring in our E-team, where I can assure you there is a mixed perspective today. Our lefty Democratic strategist Karen Finney, from the right Matt Dowd of the National Journal, and our D.C. insider, lobbyist and friend of the show, James Williams. You're happy, you're not happy, you're not happy. Why are you so happy?
Because I think it's the best political bill I've seen in 10 years.
Why?
The President of the United States gave the Republicans a lot of what they wanted. He got a lot of what he wanted. The liberals are pissed off. And in 2 years, when the President of the United States is up for re-election, either the GOP tax-cutting policies will reduce unemployment or it won't. If it doesn't, then the President of the United States can say, guess what? I did what you told me to do. I cut taxes again, and it didn't work. It didn't reduce unemployment. Your economic policy sucks. It doesn't work. If it does work, the President of the United States signed the second largest tax cut in history into law, and guess what? He gets to take credit for it.
What's wrong with that, Karen?
You know what? I agree to some degree. I think
you agree with what?
It's a gamble. That's what I think.
It is a gamble.
I agree
yes.
that it gives the president the opportunity, two things. One, to say, you know what, we tried it your way, it didn't work. Two, it's a good issue going into 2012 because, again, we now know it's definitely going to be an issue going into the presidential. And, think about someone like Mitt Romney, defending tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. But I think there was something more important that came out of this press conference, and I don't think we yet know if it will work because I think what Obama was trying to do was trying to say, look, we can play this game that we always play where you have your side and I have my side and, we put our cards on the table and I go home. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And I imagine that if you were sitting in Canton, Ohio, you're glad. Because as much as we like the fight, I think for real people, they just want something to get done.
Well, this is interesting to me. This is like a definite case of elections really matter because this would have never happened but for what happened on November. But what's, I think, more interesting to me is that this compromise, and I have great compassion for the president because he's in a stagnant economy. His $900 billion stimulus package didn't change the unemployment rate and has actually risen over the last month. He's in a tough situation. If that doesn't change, no matter what he does procedurally, he will not get reelected. He can't blame Republicans at that point. It's his, and he owns it. But I think we're in a situation where the number one issue that people agreed on Election Day was the deficit and the fiscal mess we're in. They didn't totally agree on the tax cuts. There was questions about what they should do. And basically, both parties came together and destroyed the deficit one more time and added to it. In agreement, in a compromise agreement, which is why I'm very much opposed to it. Again, I have great compassion for the president in trying to cut these deals, but if I think he should have sat the Republicans down and made them $500 billion in cuts. So you want this? You believe in cutting the deficit? I'll go for this, but go find $400 billion in cuts.
My tendency is to agree with Matt in that this seems like it was an easy deal to cut insofar as the people who are paying for the deal are not in the room. And so the Democrats take care of their people, the Republicans take care of their people, but the people that are writing the check, it's like you and I deciding where we're going to go for dinner with his credit card, but Matt doesn't even know that we've got the card, and as long as you and I agree to stay...
If you wanted the people that were in the room to pay for it, then he should have invited Saudi Arabia and China over, and they should have been the ones involved in the policy.
What's wrong with that?
How long would... Look, I agree with you. I would have loved to see that. And I think on style, I think it's important that the president not just push the Democrats to the side. I think if this is the way he's going to govern in the next 2 years, he's going to have to figure that out. That being said, how long would that have taken, what you're suggesting? That would have been, what, 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks? What about people whose unemployment insurance benefits just expired?
At some point, and the president has talked about this, and I have lauded the president many times and criticized him many times, but at some point, two of his major principles that he ran for office and inserted himself in 2004 and 2005 were the wars and the Bush tax cut. both of which, as of today, 2 years later, he is the biggest advocate now of the two major policies that the Democrats and he criticized for 4 years.
He ran on changing the way business is done in Washington. I don't know that I necessarily agree with the way he's doing it. I think it's a big risk, but I think that's what he was trying to do today.
Here's a question for you, Jim. If you look at the most recent election and interpret it through my worldview, which is that this most recent election was a further rejection of the status quo two-party political system. It played to the benefit of the Republicans this time, but it was in no way an endorsement of sort of the RNC. It was a rejection, once again, as I really think 06 and 08 and now 10, all three of those elections, of the two-party system that basically solves problems for the benefit of my party, your party, and at everybody else's expense. How is this deal not just the latest version of business as usual politics in Washington, D.C.? I scratch your back, you scratch my back, and we kick the can down the road. And isn't Matt's point, if we don't do it now, you're going to have to do it sooner or later with the Saudis, with the Chinese, with the entire debt structure of the earth.
Right.
And that this was just an occasion where they could have done that once again and did not, in effect, betraying the electorate that continues to attempt to reject this operating system. What's wrong with that theory?
On the train on the way up today,
yeah.
I flipped through my good old dog-eared copy of the Senate of the United States history.
What's wrong with Jimmy?
You know, yeah. Listen, I'm a sick dude. I'll admit it. You know, I mean, this is the kind of crap I read.
We know.
Yeah.
We're unified on that. We've got bipartisanship.
I mean, you can see my dog ears here. And listen, credit mobile scandal, teapot scandal, direct election of senators, business as usual, 1789 to now. It is business as usual, and there's nothing wrong with business as usual. Here's the deal. The president just extended unemployment insurance for people that are out of work for 13 months. He cut taxes for every American in the United States, and he added $1 trillion to the deficit. And by the way, this is not the first time we've run a deficit.
This is what I think. Bipartisanship and coming together, in my view, should not come together on giveaways. They should come together on the sacrifices that we need to make and the tough decisions that we have. And the president and the Republicans, both in this instance, in my view, and I have tremendous compassion for where the economy is and where the American public is on this, but this was not a coming together to do something that we have to make the tough choices. This was a coming together of a giveaway.
You said sacrifice and you said giveaway. Politics is giveaway and takeaway. And if you won't sacrifice, this is my friend.
That's why the American public keeps rejecting both parties.
But hang on, this is a problem. This is the problem with my friend who worked for the Bush administration. This would be the last one. Not one single time did the gentleman named George Bush that put us into war, 2 wars, by the way, did he ever ask the American people to sacrifice a single time except for our men and women in the armed forces?
No one disputes that.
Okay, but hey, let's don't talk about sacrifice for for these politicians.
But his point is that it is easy for people to come together to give things away and call that bipartisanship.
Everybody
when the American people
gives.
Go ahead, Karen.
The reality, I mean, come on, guys. This is all a sham anyway. This is all just moving the deck chairs. I mean, we've all been in the room when the wheeling dealing gets done, basically, right? The Republicans were arguing for weeks that they wanted $700 billion in tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires, but that we had to find the money to extend unemployment insurance.
I agree.
I mean,
It's hypocrisy at its worst.
But
I
Jimmy,
don't
my
disagree
point
with
is,
that.
it doesn't make any sense. So I feel like if you're the President of the United States of America and you say, these people are crazy, the people out in the real world, they're hurting. I got to take care of them and figure out how to deal with these crazy people.
As a messaging strategy, if you're the president.
Well, I think as a policy.
I thought what the president said at the end of his press conference was the best part of his press conference. And I think if he can get back to that position where he says, I have a North Star, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to follow, not get involved in the process, not cut these ridiculous deals, even though I know that's how Washington works, even though we've been in the room, people are tired of it. They don't trust the government. They don't trust Washington. When they come together and do these type of deals that nobody pays for, it's going to be more example of it.
But does not this deal further diminish the credibility of a country whose policies going back to Medicare Part D, the tax cuts with the war, the health care plan where you mandate health care, but you don't do anything about the fact that 19% of our GDP is tied up in an employer-based monopoly health care system? In other words, is this not just another issue of papering it over, Jim?
What's missing from this deal?
Any ability to actually understand why it is people don't have jobs.
No, what's missing
why it is
from
we
this
don't
deal?
have investment in this country.
No, what's missing from this deal,
and why it is that you got to do giveaways with $1 trillion in new debt.
What's missing from this deal is that there is no vote on raising the debt ceiling. If Republicans and Democrats were actually serious about balancing the budget and cutting the deficit, then the President of the United States and the Republicans that just ran on fiscal, quote, sanity, which is insanity at its best, would have absolutely mandated that there was a vote in this package that would have raised the debt ceiling. So that all...
Both sides.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. Well, they all have to raise. They all have to take the vote.
This is the problem when you have when you have 555 or whatever the number is, 535 people in Washington,
correct,
most of which are disconnected from people's lives in the country, most of which don't care that we're going to get we have to get hot checks or loans from China or Saudi Arabia. When average Americans sit out there, they try to pay their mortgage, they work as many hours as they can, like our brothers and sisters in our families. They do it every day, and people sit in Washington and they don't care. They do these deals, they cut the deals, they scratch each other's back, and nobody cares about the 200 million people out there.
Well, I will take what you just said and say to the bottom three bracket tax earners out there that, in fact, the president did care. And he went out and he defended them, and he got them their tax cuts.
But
and all the people that have been unemployed, they get another 13 months of unemployment insurance, and they go look for jobs.
It remains to see what the cost to him will be, because I do think he needed to have done his politics with the Democrats a little better. So
could he have included the Democrats in this? Absolutely. Did he? No. You know what? Sometimes I want the President of the United States to step up and, what do they call it, man up?
But how
I would rather have a president man up on things that he's asking the American public to sacrifice as opposed to things that he's asking to give away.
I would too, and that's why I wish George Bush would run for president.
George Bush is gone. Former president.
Then we need to stop polling the American people about dead presidents, because the dead ones, they seem to poll higher than the living ones.
I'm
Yes,
with him.
Dylan?
I'm with him. I'm with him. I like you.
I feel like when we're talking
But I'm
about
with
dead
him.
presidents, it's not good.
That was a band, I think. No, that was the dead Kennedy.
James, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yes.
Matt, it's a pleasure.
Great
Come
to
back
see
soon. Karen, same. We'll see you soon. Karen Finney, Matt Dowd, Jimmy Williams. For my money, the best political and policy panel in town. But then again, it's my show.